Hey everyone, welcome to another Q&A call with me. We have some good questions to go over today. I feel like these are super timely questions, super relevant questions for what's going on in the world. So I think everyone is going to be able to take some good advice from this. And I'm going to make it, about 15-20 minutes long. So stay tuned for the whole video because I think all these questions are relevant to everyone. Whereas sometimes we have questions that are a little more specific to a certain population. These questions are great for everyone and super timely to what's going on right now. So let's get started. The first question is tips for staying on track while you're on vacation, especially international travel. Such an important question to ask right now. I see everyone going on vacation right now, which is so exciting. And at the same time, you want to be strategic when you are going on vacation. You don't want this to just be a free for all because you're not at home, you're not in your routine. You do not just want to throw in the towel and say, oh, I'll just pick back up when I get home. So a couple of things that I think about when I'm going on vacation. The first is just some minimal habits that I can continue to incorporate while I'm on vacation. So whether that is getting an X number of steps, which you probably will when you're on vacation, or drinking X, number of ounces of water. What are some things, just a few things that you can carry over with you into vacation? I'm not saying you got to go do full blown workouts. I'm not saying you got to meal prep and take your food with you. I want you to enjoy your vacation, but are there a couple things from your routine that you can carry over? So when you're on vacation, it's just not this complete 180 on what you're normally doing from a day-to-day perspective. So that's one thing to think about. A lot of people are getting lots of steps, but I think water would be an important one to think about as well. And then when you're on vacation, the food strategy really depends on how long you're going away, what kind of place you're staying at. I always try to pick a place where I'm going to have some kind of fridge where I can maybe do a little prep. I can store some snacks. I can maybe do a little breakfast. When I'm choosing a location, that is my goal. I don't want to be completely without any options for food at my place where I'm staying. So think about that. I know that might not always be in your control, but try to think about, can I find an Airbnb or something with some small kitchen resources? I think breakfast is one of the best things. If you were going on a longer vacation, especially, breakfast is one of the best things that can help you stay grounded while you're on vacation. I feel like when you eat out every single meal, when you eat a breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, it starts to get really heavy. It starts to get really I don't know. I start to get really like yucky and bloated if I do that 3 times a day, 5, 6, 7 days in a row. I start to feel a little yucky. And I think by having a really solid breakfast, just like when you're at home, having a really solid breakfast can really help set the tone for the day and help you make better choices when you are on vacation. So if you're able to make a smoothie while you're on vacation, maybe you bring some protein powder, you're able to make a smoothie in the morning, or you can grab maybe some fresh fruits and some yogurt and do that. It's just nice to break up the eating out all the time. And it's just nice to have something a little smaller, something fresh and something easy. And I think it just helps making those eating decisions easier because you're breaking up the eating out all the time. And I know one temptation is when we're on vacation, we just want to enjoy all the fancy foods and the fun restaurants and what's local and all that. And absolutely, I think that's an important, fun part of vacation. But I think it really helps to have some balance in there too, to counterbalance some of those more indulgent meals with some lighter meals, some things that are more similar to your normal routine. So I think breakfast is a really key piece there. And then along those same lines, I always try to think about my restaurants ahead of time. I'm a foodie, probably just like you guys are. And so I like to look at my restaurants, do my research, see which places I want to go. But I'm also very strategic. And if I'm going to have a more heavy, indulgent meal one night, I'm going to have a lighter lunch that same day. I'm very careful about not stacking too many heavy restaurants in a row. I space things out. And I'm always trying to look for, salads. I'm always trying to, the hard thing about eating out on vacation is you can't necessarily take leftovers. But again, that's why I look for places with a fridge. So I'm always thinking about, can I share a meal? That's when Ryan and I go on vacation, we always are trying to share meals because no one wants leftovers. That's a waste of food when you're on vacation, especially if you don't have a place to keep it. And our strategy is, the more meals we share, the more places we can try. So I always encourage people to think about portion sizes when you're on vacation. Can you share with someone? Maybe you can take the leftovers and put it in your fridge and have that as like leftovers for like brunch the next day. Save some money as well. So be thinking about your restaurant choices, serving sizes. Be thinking about how you can counterbalance some more fun, indulgent meals with some lighter meals as well. So those are things I'm thinking about when I go on vacation. And we also have a module in the portal about eating on vacation. So check that out too. All right. Next question was walking after dinner for blood sugar. Why is that helpful? So this is something you maybe have heard me talking about before. I like to encourage walks after meals. I think one, it's just really nice to get out and move. Otherwise, a lot of times we eat dinner and then we're just totally sedentary and then we go to sleep. So it's nice to break up that sedentary time of the day with some movement. But also research shows that moving after a meal is great for blood sugar regulation, because what happens is when we walk, you could do other exercise as well, but typically we're thinking after dinner, you would probably do a walk. What happens is when your muscles get activated, the muscles can uptake more glucose, your insulin sensitivity is increased. And so basically what's happening, instead of getting that blood sugar spike that you normally would, you kind of blunt that response because you pull out that glucose to be used by the muscles. And so the perfect, or not, there's no perfect timing, but the recommended timing for a walk after your meals is about 30 minutes, because 30 minutes is when that blood sugar is really going to start peaking. And so if you can walk 30 minutes after a meal, also that gives your food a little time to digest. You're not just finishing your meal and you're out the door. So give your body a little time to digest. 30 minutes after a meal. Again, it doesn't have to be exact. That is a great time to just do a quick walk, and that's going to really help buffer that blood sugar response. So a post-dinner walk is a great idea, especially if if one of your goals is working on better blood sugar control. And then the next question, this is a great question. So the next question is about grocery shopping on a tighter budget. It's definitely a big concern right now. Grocery prices are going up. So what can we do about that? So I feel like there's been a lot of things I've talked about around this. So some things I'm just going to bring up just as a refresher. Some things are going to be maybe new information for you. So the kind of overall overarching things are buying in bulk, cooking in bulk, batch cooking, buying generic brands, no fancy ingredients. There's research that shows that generic brands are very comparable to the brand name. So buying in bulk, buying generic, cooking in bulk, and eating leftovers. The more you can cook in bulk, absolutely do that. That is one of the biggest drivers of your grocery costs, because the more you can reuse the same ingredients versus buying different ingredients for a different meal, the more you're going to save. I think that's probably the biggest driver to saving on your grocery budget, is buying and cooking in bulk. So anytime, I've talked about this so many times, anytime you make a recipe, you need to be double, tripling, quadrupling, depending on your family size, freezing that stuff, using it later. That is such a huge game changer when it comes to grocery budget, because you're just buying so fewer ingredients because you're doing fewer number of recipes. When you start adding in different recipes, you start adding in different ingredients that you have to buy. It's going to go so much further. So batch cooking, buying your food in bulk. So think about, going to Costco and buying there. I'm sure people are gravitating towards that right now with how grocery prices are looking. And then buying canned goods, frozen goods, and seasonal when it's fresh. So don't be afraid of canned. Don't be afraid of frozen. There's a stigma around them, but it is completely a myth. There is nothing wrong with those. When you're looking for canned, you can look at for labels like no salt added if you're worried about that sodium. You can also wash things after you get them. So if you have some beans, for example, or some vegetables, you can wash those. Those will also that will also decrease the sodium content. And frozen foods, they are typically frozen at the time of harvest. So a lot of times they actually can be fresher than some of the things that are out of season, but you're buying fresh. So don't be worried about frozen foods. Frozen foods are great. Frozen fruit, frozen veggies are awesome. Please take advantage of those. Do not be afraid. A lot of times they're even more fresh because they were frozen right at the time of harvest versus like a strawberry that was harvested and then packaged and then shipped from California and then sitting on the shelves in Texas, it actually can be a lot fresher buying frozen, ironically. So those are just kind of the general tips. Some of those might be familiar, some might not be. I did want to show you guys something to pay attention to. You can just Google this for your state. So this is Texas produce availability chart. It's kind of obvious what things are in season because they're going to be cheaper. Obviously, if you're buying things out of season, they're going to be more expensive. So you'll probably get a sense already just by shopping around what's in season. But it is nice to check because every state's a little bit different. So look at your state and what's going on. And so obviously we're in June, July right now. So anything in these two columns is going to be your friend. So watermelons right now, zucchinis right now, peaches right now. And then remember, winter is more like when we're getting our berries and stuff like that. So this chart is a little hard to decipher. You got to like get zoomed in here, but just Google your state's produce availability and you will see what is in season. But again, you can kind of gauge what's going on because of prices as well. Also shop the sales. I love shopping the sales when it comes to produce because, well, produce and meat specifically, because what happens is things start to go bad, they start to discount things. So I'm not saying buy rotten food. It's not going to be rotten. This is stuff that usually needs to sell within a day or two. So pay attention to that stuff. I'm always looking, like at HEB, if you shop there, they have the yellow tags that usually say 25 or 50% off. I'm always looking for those. They typically put them out in first thing in the morning. So shopping earlier in the morning will help you get more of those sales, but they tend to have a lot of sales on produce and meat that are that need to be sold in the next day or two, which means you also need to cook them in the next day or two, unless you freeze them. But I'm always looking for those sales, those tags for sales on produce and meat. And then also you can look in your, all of those. I don't go to this link, but if you are really balling on a budget, what you can do is look at, they send out those weekly like grocery guides, and you can look at different stores and see who's having sales on what things, because some stores might be having sales on certain cuts of meat. You can go stock up on those things. Maybe you can do your shopping there this week if steaks are on sale this week and you really want to get some steaks, and then you can freeze them and save them for later. Freezing is really your other best friend for shopping on a budget, because you can find things on sale, freeze them, and save them for later. And meat's going to be your biggest variable in terms of grocery budget. That's typically your biggest expense. So anytime you can find meat on sale, that's going to really decrease your budget. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, don't be afraid of, I mentioned canned stuff, but also don't be afraid of things like canned proteins, canned tuna, canned chicken, canned salmon. Those are great, non-perishables, typically very affordable, or those like packets of tuna, those are awesome. So definitely be thinking about those. And then a couple things that you might not have thought about is buying in whole forms versus forms where they've done the work for you. So think about things like shredded cheese versus the block of cheese, or even like sliced cheese. It's going to be more expensive than if you just buy the block of cheese. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll buy that block and then I'll just cut it up, or you can grate it yourself the old school way. Don't pay for them to do the work for you for stuff that's very simple like that. And this also applies for meat. So buying a whole chicken versus the chicken pieces. The whole chicken is going to be a much bigger bang for your buck. And so I actually I researched and found a list of different cuts of meats and the price points. So I will put this in the post, but you're going to see that the more work they have to do, the more they're going to charge for it, right? That makes sense. So the more you can buy closer to the whole food form, which is always great. I mean, we always want to keep things in the whole food form also, but I mean, convenience is helpful too. It's just, where your budget's at. But the more you stay closer to a whole food form, the cheaper it's going to get. So buying a whole chicken versus chicken breast or chicken wings. But also think about bone in versus boneless. Bone in is going to be cheaper than boneless. If they have to take out the bones, it's going to cost more. And really, it's not that hard to take out the bones. And honestly, adding in the bones gives you more flavor, more nutrients. So if you can move towards those options, that's going to save you a lot of money as well. So I will put this in the post when I share this recording of the price per pound for different cuts of meats, but just in general theory, think about moving towards whole food options and bone-in options as being significantly cheaper. So your chicken breasts are going to be a lot more expensive than your chicken thighs and chicken legs. So think about those things. And like I said, with cheese and things like that, or like, bag salads that they've already pre-made for you versus making your own, or where they've cut up the, the carrots and the veggies for you versus just doing it yourself. Those are always going to save you more money. Let me see. Organic, obviously, we've talked about this before. You don't need to buy organic unless you really want to. Also reference the Dirty Dozen list if that's the route you're going to go. Let me see if I had any more things that I didn't mention on here. Yeah, those are all my tips. And so hopefully that helps you. You do have to do a little bit more work. It's always a trade-off between convenience and your time spent on things. But if we're gravitating right now towards being more economical, then those are some easy things that you can do. Again, just chopping up the cheese yourself and deboning the meat yourself, things like that are going to save you a lot of money. But remember, your biggest levers are cooking in bulk, batch cooking, and your proteins, and how good of a price you can get on your protein. So look for those sales, try to freeze things as much as possible, and reuse your leftovers. All right. And then the last question is, what items do you have on hand that help with get you the most protein? So I feel like I've kind of sprinkled in a couple things here, but just right off the bat, something I always have on hand. I talk about this a lot. I love smoked salmon. That's a personal favorite of mine. So I always have that either frozen or fresh, because I know I can throw that in anything throughout the week, toast, pasta, whatever. And then I'm always going to have something like a Greek yogurt. I'm typically going to have some like deli meats and just some easy proteins like that, protein powder. So these are all easier proteins. I love a good like shredded rotisserie chicken to have on hand. And then you can also go into things like nuts and seeds and bars and stuff like that. I will put this whole list in the post as well. But I'm always thinking, what are the easiest proteins? Because protein can take a lot of your time as well to cook and season and marinate and prep and all this stuff. So I'm always thinking about how it's the easiest way I can make sure I can get protein in. Like, I don't want there to be any barriers to me getting my protein in, because it's such an important part of my diet, of my blood sugar control, of weight loss in general. So I'm always thinking about like, what's the easiest way I can always get protein in? So I'm thinking things like yogurts. I'm thinking things like protein powder. I'm thinking things like bars and then some very easy to prep actual meats. So I will put this list in there as well. And don't forget all those canned things I mentioned. Awesome. Like, those are great. They're non-perishable. So your canned tuna, your canned salmon, and your canned chicken. Don't be afraid of those at all. So that's where we're going to wrap up today. I will put these resources in the post when I share this recording. So let me know if you have any follow-up questions. These were great questions for what's going on right now. So I hope you guys got some good takeaways. Thanks.